Hey guys, today I want to talk about two terms that are used a lot in pro play, that are used a lot in shoutcasting, that are also used a lot whenever you get a coaching session with any one of us that do coaching. I know Kyle Ferguson, myself, we all do coaching. We'll use the terms micro and macro, which in my opinion are the two most important terms out of this entire game. All right? They're the most important terms because it's the easiest way to find out where you lack in the game. For example, if you ever feel like you're better than everyone in your ELO, but you feel like you're still not winning more than 50% of games, you may have skill in one area but not in the other area. So what are micro and macro? Well, to begin with, let me explain a little bit about what these terms mean outside of the game, and then I'll get into what they are inside the game. So let's say, for example, you want to start a restaurant chain. Macro would be choosing where your locations are and what you want to serve in your restaurant, while micro would be like how many tomato slices you want on your sandwich. Now, that seems kind of small, and I want to explain a little bit about micro and macro. Is while macro tends to be on the large scale and micro tends to be on the small scale, that doesn't necessarily mean that macro is more important than micro. You see, micro adds to the efficiency of everything that you do, which makes it easier for macro to be accomplished, as well as it synergizes really well with macro and micro synergize really well with each other. So if you have this restaurant and you say, well, let's use 2 tomatoes instead of 4 tomatoes, you could be saving, imagine you have 5 locations and you're serving over 100 sandwiches a day, all with the difference between 2 tomatoes or 4 tomatoes. You could be the difference of like $5,000 in tomatoes a year. It sounds crazy, but it's true. That is what it comes down to. A tomato is usually a little bit under $1, and you can usually get about 8 to 10 slices out of a tomato. So overall, it adds up very quickly if you're doing double the amount of tomatoes. So you want to make sure that these small things end up being efficient so that the large scale things like picking how many locations you want, where you want the locations, are actually worth it to do those things. So neither one of those things is more important than the other. They both have their purpose. Another example is macro versus micronutrients. We know, if you've ever taken a biology or human nutrition course, you know that proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are your macronutrients. That's what gives you the energy to function every single day of your life. Without that, you die. Your organs don't get enough energy to function. Your muscles don't get enough energy to function. But micronutrients is the same. You've got vitamins and you've got minerals, which are all micronutrients. These are just as important, but you just need less of them. While your macronutrients, you need a whole meal to give you the macronutrients you need. Micronutrients, you need a small pill that will get you through a couple days of your micronutrients. So they're both just as important, but you just need different amounts of them. So how does this pertain to Heroes of the Storm? Well, in Heroes of the Storm, there's a few things that are really important about macro and micronutrients. For example, I'm going to go back a little bit and explain what the difference is. So, macro in-game means to utilize the map and the large scale of the game. What I mean by the large scale is taking towers, taking keeps, taking camps, taking bosses, and taking objectives. That is the large scale of the game. So if that's the large scale, the macro of the game, what is the micro of the game? Well, the micro of the game is utilizing your skill shots, your abilities, and your position in fights. What I mean by that is if you use your skill shots correctly, you can push a lane faster, or you can kill someone faster, you can utilize more damage. You can position better so you take less damage, which means if you take less damage, you can get more hits off because you can now attack a little bit more. In this case, you can see he's stutter stepping and orb blocking, and he's utilizing his abilities so that he's getting the most damage off while taking the least amount of damage. And he's auto-attacking and moving so that he can stay close to this person without missing out on any hits. All of this added together allowed them to lead up to a kill. These are all micro decisions that he made versus what the enemy variant made, which allowed him to take over and win in this fight. Another macro decision would be, or a micro decision, would be doing something like getting Mule as a Abathur, and then using your Mule to interrupt someone who's trying to channel on something. Placing a Mule, activating your Q, and then you do a quick W, which interrupts the channel. It was actually the Stukov that interrupted in this case, but it would have still interrupted him before that. That is a micro decision that was made by Abathur to interrupt this thing. It seems small, but in the grand scheme of things, these micro decisions really add up on the efficiency of how you win the game. So, which should you be working on? Should you be focusing on macro decisions or micro decisions? Well, ultimately, I think that you should be focusing on both because they both synergize really well with each other. And I will explain which ones I consider more important in which ranks, but let me get into this for an example. So, if you get this objective right here before, or this camp before the objective, it forces the enemies to try to stall this, which means that you could have gotten a free objective, but then they had to go in and do this. So the macro play and the micro play both had importance on this particular objective, and they both will have a ton of importance. Placing an Abathur up here allows you to push a lane and get experience from things being destroyed very easily, which will get this team, red team, an advantage. So there's many advantages you can get from both macro and micro play, and I think on some maps it's more important to go with one or the other. For example, on this map, there's a lot of things you can do to set up for macro play, but on Braxis, for example, it may be harder to get value out of that because the camps usually will just die to wave clear very quickly, while the objective itself comes down to who can kill who. So I think some maps it's more important to go for one or the other, while other maps it might be better to go for like microplay. So what do I personally believe is the best way to improve in certain ranks? I find in low ranks people miss way too much soak and they miss way too many camps. If you utilize the soak and the camps in lower ranks, you're easily going to have 3 to 4 ranks or 3 to 4 levels over the enemies, which means that microplay is less important because you're going to be out leveling them so much that you can 1v2 anyone on their team. So you only need half of the people to show up to a team fight to win the team fight. That's the main reason why I think macro is more important in low ranks, and in high ranks, people do soak in lanes, so it's harder to win by just macro play alone, and instead, you need to beat them by out-trading them and out-positioning them in team fights so that you win in team fights. And I feel like the higher rank you get, the more micro is important, but don't get me wrong. See, there's many other coaches that disagree with me. For example, Kala says it's more important to have micro play. And what he did when he was ranking up is he played a lot of Genji and he out-traded people, he out-rotated people, and he out-won in most team fights. The problem that he found is when he was losing, he didn't have any wave clear, and he wasn't able to handle any situation against someone who had a lot of wave clear, because his team would never wave clear. So many of the videos where you see he got really frustrated at the game was because his team had no macro play. So while he is still winning way more than 50% of his games by focusing on micro play, I am not wrong by saying that it's also macro play can move you up in ranks very quickly, and he is not wrong that he's saying that micro play. If you're just really good at one of those things and decent at the other ones, you can still move up in ranks. But it's nice to understand where you neglect something. I said earlier, you feel like you're better in a certain rank than everyone else, yet you are still being held back by something. If you feel like you're always being held back and you're always getting more kills than everyone else on your team and you're getting more kills than anyone else on both teams, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're better than everyone else in your rank. It just means that you have a different focus. You're focusing on micro play while the rest of the teams are focusing on macro play. So you may still lose even though you had the most kills purely because you focused on the wrong thing. Now, if you feel like you're constantly getting the most siege damage and you're doing the most in every area, but you're still losing, same rules apply. You're not getting enough micro value. You're not winning in that. And I want to also add that if you happen to be solo laning and you're constantly losing in the solo lane, you do want to find out the deficits of where you are. Are you not poking enough? Are you not trading enough? Are you not zoning enough globes? What are you doing that's lacking in the micro area that's causing you to lose the solo lane? On maps like Braxis, where the solo lane's so important, the microplay is really the difference between the game. So it really depends on the map and the rank you're in, but both are very important and they both synergize really well with each other. That is micro and macro play. If you'd like to add anything else, toss in the comments below. Overall, I appreciate you guys for watching this video, and I always appreciate an extra subscriber here and there. Thank you very much.